Yes, it is the Songwriting for Guitar After Hours podcast. Thank you. Yes, we are live. Here we are on YouTube. Yes, this is the Songwriting for Guitar After Hours podcast on our YouTube. And if you're watching this and you're scrolling through our YouTube page and you haven't subscribed, just hit that little button that says subscribe. There's a little bell. You'll get notified every time that we go live, every time that we schedule amazing events. And we've got lots of things in the works that we'll be releasing on YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And yes, this is the After Hours podcast. So that means if there's an After Hours podcast, there must be a podcast. Yes, there's a podcast that's released every Wednesday. And so I got this little QR code, which is right here. So there you go. That's where you scan it. You can go listen to, at this point, 98 episodes. I think that's pretty insane. 98 episodes that you can go back and listen to. So you can take a listen to all our amazing episodes with Frank Turner, Bonnie Baker, Allie Moss, Jared Reddick from Bowling for Soup, Stephen Egerton from The Descendants, me, some of our amazing coaches, lots of different people in the songwriting space. James McMurtry, old school, awesome, amazing Americana writer. You can listen. So believe me, don't take my word for it. Just click the QR button and go listen. And yes, I got to let you know, I got a book. It was just released. Oh, there's a little, hold on. There we go. See, I didn't go away. I know you were worried, but I'm right here. And I got a book, and I would love to send it to you. That's right. I want to send you this book. I've already paid for it. In fact, all you got to do is just pay for shipping. So all you got to do is click this or scan this QR code right here. It's going to take you straight to the page. And guess what? You can claim your free copy of my book right now. Just pay for the shipping. So there we go. After Hours podcast is starting right now. This week was episode 97, going from live gigs to full-time production with Steph Trivison. And I find what's interesting about the podcast, sometimes you'll meet people and I'll interview people that it feels like I've known them for a very long time, like a very close friend, in the sense too of they have, we have similar ideas about things, similar journeys, but also too in the conversation, because sometimes most of I'd say a good deal of our podcasts right here have been amazing. Like the flow is always really, really good, but there are some that just really knock it out of the park that within the first couple minutes of the podcast, I can tell this is going to be really good. And with Steph, that's exactly how I felt. Number one, because I think she's just super personable, and she's so good at communicating ideas, songs. So naturally, she's a very good communicator of her story, and that's really what I wanted this podcast to be. And it's interesting because she was not far from where I'd grown up. So I'd lived in Pittsburgh a good chunk of my life before we moved to Nashville. She was located in Cleveland, and really Pittsburgh and Cleveland is not that far. Cleveland and Pittsburgh is like a super, super hot minute from each other. But it's interesting that we are super close, but very similar backgrounds. Like Steph was in a very band-oriented punk band. And when I mean punk band, pop punk band. And during that time of those early, like late 90s, early 2000s, we're talking like Epitaph Records, Fat Records, Drive-Thru Records, Fearless, Hopeless, all those ones we were connecting. And I was like, oh yeah. Like I thought it was cool. She opened for one of Jack Antonoff's bands, Steel Train. And if you're wondering who Jack Antonoff is, he went on to go start this band called Fun, which had a huge string of huge singles in 2012. And then he went on to do Bleachers, which had a string of very good singles. And then he ended up producing Lana Del Rey and has produced the slew of very, very, very successful Taylor Swift records. And Steph's really cool moment was where Jack went up and like, you guys are amazing. Can we swap CDs? Because one of the things that we talk about in this podcast is looking for moments to solidify that you're on the right path. It may not necessarily be a crazy waving the flag moment like, hey, this is amazing, but just like little indicators that you're headed in the right direction. Because I think all of us, when we're pursuing music, especially in the beginning, and I even think at midpoints, we want confirmation that we're headed in the right direction. You don't have to give us anything. You don't have to, give us a gold record. You don't have to give us this, but just like a little boost of just like, no, you're doing good. Keep going, keep going. And it was cool that was one of her moments of like, keep going. And also too, that similarity of like coming up in bands, but then eventually segueing into the licensing world. And it's interesting how everyone eventually gets there. Or some, I should say. Rusty, what's up? You made it. You made it for episode 97, recapping 97. This After Hours podcast has only been up for just a little bit. 97 is the podcast episode this week. And it's interesting too. I have a friend who's one of our coaches here at Songwriting for Guitar, really good friend of mine and collaborator. She lives in Nashville, Madeline Finn, who Steph played with a whole bunch. Like they would share bills. They would, and when Steph was on the podcast, I texted Maddie and I was like, hey, I'm having Steph. And then all Maddie said was, I love Steph. And I can tell why Steph has made such a good impression on so many people. Again, is super personable and willing to put in the work. The one thing that I loved about our conversation, especially as we segue into the licensing realm, she has a very long-term mindset. She realizes the things that she's pursuing, the things that she's working on, the things that are going on. This is long-term. I have to be patient. I'm going to have to work at it, and it's going to be difficult. And I find those realizations to be super refreshing for me. Because it seems sometimes in music licensing, music licensing is the synchronization of, music to film, television, advertising, many different forms. It's expanded. Sometimes when people are wanting to go down that path, they just want it kind of like, hey, just give it to me. Or just like, the song's good enough, go. But the ones that do really well, which Steph has, I mean, we're talking commercials, McDonald's. She's done a ton with the Care Bears. She worked on a huge thing. BBC, Grammys. On top of that, like a ton of MTV, VH1, ABC, NBC. I could keep on going on. You get the idea that now she has this track record of just crushing it. And that was the next thing Maddie texted me when she said, I love Steph. She was like, she is crushing it in sync right now. And she is. She's doing extremely well. But what I love is she's super humble. And she is consistently a connoisseur of development, getting better. Is in no way, shape, or form feeling like, oh, this is where I'm at and this is a good place to stop. Constantly looking to push to that next level and not get complacent with what she has. And I think that was another thing that I loved about our conversation. I feel the same way. A good deal of what I like to do is gear monetarily the things that I want to do into learning. And I feel that's the only way that you're going to progress. So I love that there was that correlation there. But hearing her journey in licensing, that she was very patient and she realized that it was going to take time, was pretty much how I felt as well when I started. I did a lot of trips to LA, Nashville, and knowing no one, not having any songs, not feeling good about anything. But the one thing that I felt good about was being able to just connect with people, to talk. I think that's one of the biggest skill sets. We run a membership called the Insider's Track, which is just focused primarily on licensing, and it's our licensing membership. I was talking about how one of the biggest things I had control over was my ability to connect with people. So in the beginning stages where it seems like there's very little control, little ability to do anything, the best thing I can do is show up, be personable, helpful, kind, and that's it. And Steph was the same way. That's how she connected with great producers who took her under their wing. And she was able to grow her production chops by watching them, being present in the studio, asking questions, connecting with them. And it was the same thing for me. At first, I felt very beginner. She felt beginner, but through those mentorships and through that coaching and through that time and through that patience, plus with lots of songs that, they're okay, but they're not meant to be pitched or they're not meant to be showcased to libraries. They're purely meant to be the songs you use for practice so you can write better songs and then go ahead and start pitching them. She was kind of in that same spot, which I love. And I think those are the people that end up doing well. They're not the most talented. I think that's the misconception. Most people think, well, those that do well are super, super talented. No, those that do well have skills that are built over time. They might be good at some aspects, but I find the ones that are super talented don't really do well. And here's what I mean. And actually, Steph and I talked about this after recording the episode, which was fun. There's a book called Grit that I love, and it's by Angela Duckworth. She's a professor. And she basically has this idea, and she backs it up with science, that talent does not necessarily mean success. It just means you're talented and you're really good. You can plateau, and a lot of people do because they feel like it comes very naturally. But when there comes a challenging situation, they never really build that skill. They just kind of stay here. Now, the ones that don't do well, or maybe the ones that it's not easy, I shouldn't say do well, but it's going to be a little bit of a climb. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Those are the ones that actually surpass the talented people because they just work at it. They stay with it, they develop it. They're constantly refining and building more skills. And definitely as producers, as songwriters, Steph and I agree, like you have to challenge. She mentions in the podcast I love, you can't write a sync song. And when we reference sync song, a sync song is just cheesy. It's just really bad. Like they view television and film as, oh, I can throw this subpar song at it and it should work. It won't, because music supervisors, libraries can sniff out really, really, really bad songs. What they're looking for is quality. The same thing that a publisher would be looking for. Same thing an artist would be looking for is quality. They're looking for authenticity and great production. And so that was another moment where I was like, yes. But those that challenge themselves and build those skills over time really up their level of songwriting. So they're always delivering quality and they're always looking to deliver something even better. So in general, I don't know, I think it was just so cool to see Steph's journey, and I love her content too. The reason I had her on the podcast, I had followed her on Instagram. I don't know how, what, who, or this is what's interesting about the online space now. To think maybe 20 years ago, this was like impossible unless you had gone to a conference, exchanged numbers with someone. That's the only way that you can meet someone. But now we're in an age where you can be in the same field, you could follow a hashtag, you can go from here to here to here, that suddenly you're connected with other people in your field that you never have met in person. And you're not sure how that connection happened, but it has. Regardless, somehow Steph and I followed each other. And it was really cool. Her content is really engaging. She does these breakdowns that are fantastic on YouTube, gearing on vocal stacks. This is how you align guitars. This is how I built this production. She really kind of like unveils the secrets behind, or she doesn't even call them secrets. She just unveils, this is how I made this song. This is how I shaped this vocal part. This is how I got these vocal stacks in line. Here's how I got this opportunity. She's very transparent, but she's also very transparent about the work. I just loved those videos. and those content, and I could see she was posting like, hey, just got this placement. So I saw consistency in her placements. I also saw consistency in her content and her willingness to share. And those are the people that I love connecting with. Those are the people that I want to have on the podcast. Those are the ones that I want to chat about more. I feel every single person that I've had on the podcast, they all have a willingness to share the story behind how they made something. Like from episode 1, Frank Turner, really good. Let's fast forward to like Stephen Egerton from The Descendants. Let's fast forward to James McMurtry. You know, all their willingness to share their mistakes, especially on that James McMurtry one of my favorite. He's an amazing singer-songwriter. This is a little off the topic, but that's why it's After Hours. He's an amazing singer-songwriter based out of Austin, Texas, and he's been around for, decades. But one of my favorite albums is this album called Candyland by him, and it was produced by John Mellencamp. And I ended up telling him, one of my favorite songs from you is Hands Like Rain. And he was just like, and he has a very like low, deep, like Texas, because that's where he's from, Austin, voice. And he was like, yeah, when I wrote that bridge, I still don't really like it. I kind of slapped it together. Oh, okay. So I slapped it together. So it's funny how everybody is developing their system, and some of us may think it's better than others, but we realize when we look back at the things that we've created, it was in development, it was building over time, and there you go. And so they're always willing to share. I think that's what I loved about Steph, willingness to reveal the story and the curtain behind her system, just like James was willing to reveal, like, hey, the song. Yeah, I kind of made that bridge up on the spot. And we didn't use a metronome for this album, to hide up rhythmic inconsistencies. John Mellencamp would add various different percussion elements to try to hide some of the discrepancies in tempo. And I was like, well, how about that? There's willing to share that behind the scenes. But yeah, every single person I've had on this podcast has been willing to share the whole story. And I think Steph was, again, it felt like Steph and I had been really good friends for years. And so her willingness to share stories on placements, the production, how she's bettering her skills, that she's honest, like, hey, I don't live in a music city. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's where she lives, which is cool. I don't know where that is. I basically, if I know how to get from my kitchen to here, or from here to Trader Joe's to just get food, I think that's frankly all I need to, because I don't travel that much. But this week's episode, I would highly recommend, if you didn't check out this week's episode with Steph. It was fantastic. And you can go check out some of Steph's songs. The other thing we talked about, which I love, is you can have really successful placements, but you don't have to worry about the streams. Like everybody right now is talking about royalties, streaming platforms like Amazon. Well, not Amazon, but Spotify, more that they're not getting paid enough, but that if you are doing songs well enough for licensing, that is more than enough. I forget the math behind it. Actually, I'm kind of curious. There's a little Spotify calculator, if you don't. So you can, let's see. Here we go. Spotify calculator, where you can just basically just like write in how many streams will it take for me to make X amount. Here we go. So if I go, and I'm just going to do this for the heck of it. Where'd it go? I lost it. Here we go. Royalty calculator. Okay, so if I did, I think it was like 50,000 streams. No, I need 500,000 streams. Yeah. So 500,000 streams is the equivalent of the royalties. And this is if you own 100% of the song. you'll get $1,190. Here's the thing. I can get that for just one great placement within a show. I don't have to worry. I think that is the beauty of licensing, that we worry about streaming rights and all of that, which I think is important, but just to give a wider perspective, you can get a song on a TV show and you could get thousands of dollars, a couple $100, which you don't have to worry about the streaming. In fact, I've seen people get amazing streams because they've had a song on a show. I think Heather Evans posted, one of my collaborators, I forget, our song was on Netflix, Love is Blind. Immediately, like the Shazams, which if you don't know Shazam, it's basically like a little app. So if you hear a song, you click it and Shazam kind of reads the room and like the song and then pulls it up and says, here's the song in itself. And so she was able to get a ton of streams, and then that will cause her Spotify to go up because people will start to follow her because of that, which I think is pretty cool. And Steph and I were talking about that a little bit as well, off topic, because we were like, it's funny how you don't really have to worry about streams. Like the streams actually happen after a song is placed. So this week, I would highly recommend, if you didn't, go back and listen to episode 97, live gigs to full-time production with Steph Trivison. And I think her journey is fantastic. A journey of commitment, from transitioning from gigging to writing to sync to finally diving in fully to do the whole production. So that's up. And if you didn't know, I got a book. You can get a copy right now. In fact, you know what? I'll give you a free copy. Just pay for the shipping. So the book's already paid for. Just click this little QR code right now. It will take you to claim your free copy. And yes, go listen to episode 97. You can just stream it right here. Another fancy little QR code right here takes you there. Over 97 episodes, 98 if you include the trailer. And then, of course, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. So our After Hours podcast, we are changing times. So our After Hours podcast will be happening every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. Why the change? My schedule's changing. I'm still doing it. So next week, I'm going live at 4 p.m. Central. So make sure you are here 4 p.m. Central on our YouTube channel for our After Hours podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Rusty, I appreciate it. Everyone who's watching this, we will see you next week for the After Hours podcast at 4 p.m. Central.